And I wanted to talk about Beyonce right quick and her music award that she recently won for having the best country album. And what astrology can tell us about Beyonce's inner drive to win, and what is really going on, what I think is really going on behind her energy. So, when we look at her astrology chart based off of the astrotheme coordinates, she has Mars in the 10th house. Now, I started my Mars series, Mars in a Feminine chart, with Beyonce talking about her Mars in Leo. But of course, the secondary thing to analyze and assess about your Mars is the house placement that it's in. So because her Mars is in the 10th house, she's a secondary Mars and Capricorn energy, right? So she's got Mars and Leo, but in the 10th house. This gives longevity. And the 10th house is what you would say is your award ceremony. It has that energy in it where we look to get a trophy, right? Because the 10th house is naturally Capricorn ruled, but in her chart, it's Leo ruled, right? So her Mars is wanting to win the trophy. So this is a atypical place where you will see Mars win. And this is why Mars in a Capricorn house is in classical astrology a really strong placement. Because when you put Mars with Capricorn energy, the goal is to win the trophy. And in this 3D reality, that's exactly what we typically understand as winning, right? So let's just backtrack a little bit. Looking at your Mars, if it's not in Aries, if it's not in a Capricorn house, right? If it's not in these placements where it wants to win a trophy, that doesn't mean you can't win. It just means what you're trying to win is not typical to what people would think. Okay? And so you can absolutely still win, but you got to do it in your own way. Now, going back to Beyonce's chart, I also wanted to focus on her stellium in the 12th house. So, according to her birth information on astrotheme, Beyonce has a stellium in Libra in the 12th house. Now, typically, when I see a lot of planets in the 12th house, I'm going to be honest, in my little, short time span of 10 years of studying charts and reading for people, when you've got heavy 12th planets, this is usually somebody who needs a lot of help. They might not they may not live like how everybody else lives, because most of us live in the 3D rules of the sixth house where you have to have a job and you have to do that. So I've seen plenty of people with 12 houses where they have to move back in with their parents, or they need a lot of rehabilitation, or they need some sort of serious help to get them to function in the everyday world, okay? But I just love Beyonce's energy in which she is an enhancer. She's changing the game, and how astrology understands the 12th house, just as like how astrology understands Pisces. This is also a big game changer that I'm very excited for people to see and break through, because we get very narrow-minded with these energies. So with Beyonce having a stellium in the 12th house, we do see some of these aspects that I've seen in everyday charts show up, in which she doesn't live a normal everyday job, right? And her hiatus matters. So the time that she spends off, she spends a lot of time, hiatus time off. This is what you typically see with people with 12th house energies. But like I said before, is a lot of people get judged for, a lot of people are called bum bitches, because they don't live by the sixth house agenda. So with Beyonce having this, she's showcasing a different version of yourself that can be extremely successful, even though you've got a heavy 12th house space. So what happens when the 12th house is not a self-sabotaging house? It's connected to the archetypes that we understand with Jung, where the 10th and the 11th and the 12th house are where you make your mark. It's where you make your mark. The 12th house is a part of the fourth quadrant, that quadrant of making your mark in the world, being remembered for something, starting off with the initiating house of the 10th house, which we typically aspire for, our career, the trophies, the rewards, in which she does have Mars there activating that 10th house. So she is seen for her rewards. But what I see that Beyonce is really trying to do is leave a legacy. She's attempting to be legendary. And the 12th house is connected to preservation of memory. So when somebody activates the 12th house successfully, they don't self-sabotage, but they activate it successfully, they are remembered for time beyond their life on this earth, at least their temporary life in this realm, right? Because life continues on, like, right? But as far as her time here as this entity, as Beyonce, the goal for this energy is to be in the history books, to be preserved and to be memorable, which brings me back to the country music, the country album, and her need to be a part of the Country Music Awards, in which I theorize that Beyonce is not just trying to win the award for award's sake, as her Mars may showcase. Her Mars basically got her there because her stellium, when you have a stellium, 3 or more planets in a chart, that's your real focus. And Mars is aiding that stellium now. Not to mention that Mars also works well with what? Saturn. And Mars is in a Saturn house, and her Saturn is in the 12th house. So Mars is working hard to aspire for historical memory in that 12th house, to be a mythological myth of something people can refer to long after she is gone. This is a level of courage in the 12th house that we just don't see, except for very strong and dynamic characters who are willing to take it there, which means that usually they have aspects that are pushing them to be more aspirational, like Mars in the 12th house, or like for her sake, Mars aspecting the 12th house, right? And Mars can either be aspecting the house in harmony or not, it doesn't matter, but you'll see that these people are trying to be something memorable. Now, this is a completely different energy, but a good example, which is Donald Trump, similar Mars in Leo, but in the 12th house. So because Donald Trump has Mars in the 12th house, he succeeds at that legendary legacy. Even if it is turbulent, it will be a memorable mythological person long after they're gone. That's what we're looking for in the 12th house. So when people have a personal planets here, sometimes they fall to the darker sides of the 12th house. But it doesn't mean that you always have to, because when you see people like this, charts like these, it shows you that what we understand about the 12th house is so narrow-minded because there's so much packed in this area, which is basically our subconscious and what we see about ourselves. So when you have a dominant stellium in the 12th house, you have these two options. You're either seeing yourself as the trash bag of the zodiac, like people will say, or you're seeing yourself as somebody who has accumulated so much knowledge that they must be remembered. And they can be almost the same exact idea, but just two ways of seeing it that the 12th house unlocks. So I'm really passionate about this topic. If you watch my previous video on this Pisces season and how this Pisces season is very unique with the North Node being there, how there's a true change happening with these energies that we're starting to learn. And we can't just keep going with the victimized, self-sabotage narrative, trash bag of the barrel that we spin to Pisces and the rulership of the 12th house. Because as you can see, the subconscious now can actually have more of our control, can have more of our influence when we understand it. So if you have heavy 12th house placements and you are the type that actually sits more in the lower negative narratives of the 12th house, I highly recommend to check out my worksheets called the 12th house and hospitality worksheets. Really there to spin the narrative and see how you can bring more hospitality to your life so that you can be in those spaces where you're more memorable, where you're hitting more of a legacy act than just being the trash bag of it all. Okay, you guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.